Hello and welcome to the Financial Bunny TV. My name is Nicolette Mashil and of course I am your Financial Bunny. Today we're talking about investing in real assets and we've got another guest. His name is Warren Winchester and he's the General Manager of Ventures at Fate Group. Now, before we even get into it, do remember none of our videos constitute as financial advice. If you are, however, looking for financial advice, please do speak to somebody who is certified and registered with the FSCA. And thank goodness, once again, that Fate Group is a licensed FSP. So let's get straight into it. In our last conversation, we were speaking to Michael Field, who is the General Manager of Investments at Fate Group, and he spoke a little bit about some of the asset classes that do exist, Warren. But how does one prescribe value to an asset? How do I know this is the property I should be buying, or this is the asset, this is the stock that I want to be buying?
For sure. So I think, there's various ways to prescribe values to your assets. If it's freely traded on a stock market, it's quite easy because there's a traded price and it gets published all the time. I guess if you're looking more in the realm of alternatives and, something that isn't traded, then it becomes a bit more difficult. So there are various ways that you can do valuations yourself, but basic people don't understand those equations, those methodologies of being able to identify where the value lies. So I guess a lot of the time you have to rely on an expert, especially in an alternative type space, because a lot of the time it's, in an unregulated space, or perhaps it's not freely liquid or freely traded. So then there could be various methodologies of how do you calculate the value of those assets. Various methodologies like net present value calculations, internal rates of return, but these are all quite advanced calculation methodologies in terms of getting to a value. If it's something like a property, it's fairly easier because you can do a bit of research into the area. You can rely on the expertise of estate agents, things like that. But really in the alternative space, the best way is to rely on an expert.
Okay, hold on though. Let's talk about that because I've invested in Fate Group, right?
Yes.
So you buy, for instance, you buy a moringa tree, right? Or you buy a macadamia tree, right? Now, how are you guys putting the prices on those trees? Because I just need to get a seed and grow my own tree. But of course, you guys are taking the whole farm and then what takes to grow that tree, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, the value that we prescribe to that asset is based on rigorous due diligence that we do, not only on the partners, but on the sectors. So you mentioned macadamias. So we look at the global outlooks. We look at that location, the climatic conditions that are there, the soil conditions, the historical results of what the farmers produced. What is macadamia selling for? Which markets are you selling it to? In which currency? So all of these are elements that we take into consideration when we're determining these values. And then we model it out. So we build out rigorous financial models that we apply various sensitivities to. So we say, great, the average price for macadamias for the last 10 years has been X. We're expecting it to increase by 5% per year. But what happens if it doesn't increase by 5%? What happens if it decreases by 5%?
So you got to work probabilities into that.
Correct, exactly. So we build out, a wide range of various probabilities of what could happen, even around the actual produce coming off those trees. So if we say they get in 4 tons a hectare, what happens if they get 3? What happens if they get 5? So we apply all these various techniques to the financial model. And that's then where we go in, normally in a prudent level, to say, well, this is investor money. So we custodians of that money for our investors. So anything that's on our app or our website or anything that we market is really an estimated return that we expect to happen. And that's taking all those probabilities into consideration. And a lot of the time we're advertising it at a slightly lower end to make sure that, in like a medium to worst case scenario, this is the range that you can expect. So that investors can then get the upside if it outperforms what we've modeled out.
And speaking about that, let me throw you a curveball. Fluctuations within asset classes. But I want to specifically speak about one, cryptocurrency. Let's start off with just generally what causes fluctuations in the value of assets. And maybe let's talk a little bit about crypto assets as, the FSCA and SARS have now called them.
So I guess in your normal assets, depending on financial results, if it's an equity or a share, that influences it, any bad media around it. So there's a lot of external factors that could influence the value of traded investments. But if you look at a lot of the alternatives, and you mentioned one of the alternatives, crypto, I mean, as
I like
as Fed Group, we've taken the view to not classify it as an investment that we want to offer to our investors. Because it's so volatile, it's so all over the place, it's very unregulated. And a lot of the time it's driven by market sentiment. So, we've had a lot of big losses lately in terms of these platforms being hacked or a lot of the information being made freely available. So in terms of the alternative that we chose assets that we can mitigate the risks against it. So being able to say, well, how do you incorporate technology on a farm, or how do you incorporate various stepping clauses or various securities around the investment so that you can protect that value to a certain point. Whereas with something like crypto, there is no protection for the investor.
For the actual value.
Correct.
Okay. I like that. And I guess that's probably also why some of the due diligence that is held very strictly for instance, listed companies in terms of what they need to comply with to even stay listed, that in itself is a form of protection of the value, right?
Exactly. And within Fed Group, we have multiple FSP licenses. We're registered with the FSCA. So all those corporate governance layers that we have built into our business, we apply that in our alternative investment space.
I like that.
So being able to have, regular updates of us getting onto the farms, meeting with the partners, having our technology monitoring the various systems, managing the resources on the farm. So we're building in mitigating factors into each of the investments that protect that value for the investors.
Yes.
But it also gives us the ability to drive the yield on the projects that we're involved in through things like monitoring temperature, humidity, and having a computer with machine learning capability applying different mitigating factors when something happens on these projects.
But of course, that's not a standard that is expected from impact farming as an industry in South Africa. It's what you guys do because you've put a fund on top of it, right?
Correct. Okay. And we looked at how can we mitigate every risk that could be present.
Yes.
And obviously, when you're looking at farming or even green energy, there are some risks that are outside of your control, like climatic conditions or, soil conditions, pests. But through the use and integration of technology, we're actually able to identify early warnings on those risks. So if your temperature's dropping too low or it's going too high, we can build in heat fans that get activated by a computer or overhead irrigation systems that cool the plants down. All of this to keep the metrics that are going to drive the best quality and yield coming off those projects within the perfect range. So your temperature, your humidity, things like that, so that we make sure that we're driving yields for investors, but at the same time protecting their capital.
Speaking about yields, there's a notion that the moment you go ESG or social impact investing, you are compromising returns of clients. What are your thoughts on that?
So I think if you look at ESG investing globally, it has been a trend that a lot of the time investors have to forego some margin to be able to do good with their money. I think that is a fallacy, and if you're doing it in the right manner, you're actually able to drive better yields and better returns for investors. So through the integration of tech and the use of being specialist investors into these type of projects, we're starting to be able to prove that through looking after people and planet and ticking all the boxes of ESG and really focusing more on impact investing as opposed to ESG, we're actually getting better returns on these projects.
I like that, yeah.
So, making sure that your communities are involved, that you're looking after the planet, that you're having early warning systems and technology that's helping drive the yields, we're actually able to generate more income, not only for the farmers or the users of the electricity that we're involved in, but also for our investors. And we're able to pass those increasing returns onto our investors.
So let's talk about that. South Africa, high unemployment rate, South Africa, GBV, South Africa, HIV. So there's quite a number of social places in which you guys could have chosen to source out your alternative assets, right? Yes. Is it firstly worth it to invest in social impact in South Africa? Is there a notion of Fed Group moving in that direction at some point?
In this day and age, you can't afford not to invest.
Absolutely.
Into it. It's such critical issues that we face in our country, and being able to create as many jobs as possible is first of all the first thing we have to approach. So if we look at, let's take agriculture, for instance, in South Africa, around 5% of all jobs in South Africa is in the agricultural sector. If you look at a country like India, around 50 to 60% of the population is employed in agriculture. So there's a massive opportunity to increase the number of jobs by being able to scale the various sectors of agriculture. At the same time, dealing with the social issues, obviously job creation then comes off it, but being able to then look at food security. So how do we get better quality nutrition, high nutrition food to the various communities, especially in the underprivileged communities, and being able to make that a part of how we do our funding. So being able to set up areas where we can grow food around these various farms that we're involved in, or around these green energy projects, so we can give back to the communities. And last of all, I mean, energy. The returns that you can generate from a solar plant is really good returns, and it's a monthly return, so it improves your liquidity. But, in South Africa especially, we're not very far from load shedding becoming food shedding.
Yes.
And, it's very difficult to go to sleep without having watched TV, but try go to sleep hungry because there's no food available, and it's definitely a much more intense issue that we face.
Absolutely.
So being able to then get the private retail investors as well as other companies involved in being able to deal with these issues that we face in our country is actually up to us to be able to assist with that. So being able to invest directly into energy generation and help alleviate all the stress that's happening on the grid.
Hitting the social part of it.
Exactly. So,
Absolutely.
and through that, also being able to create jobs, not just in building in the sites, but in maintaining them. And being able to build multi-purpose energy generating sites where you can integrate agriculture with green energy production, really can take the local communities around these projects, train them up, get skills transference, but also get the buy-in from the communities, which then help protect these projects better.
There's two things I want to ask you. One is, why do you think there's such an underdevelopment in funding agriculture in South Africa? I mean, it's a no-brainer for me, you know what I mean? So why do you think there hasn't been a big drive in investing in agriculture in South Africa? And then the second one I want to find out is, why are big fund managers not investing from a social perspective into areas in South Africa that can build South Africa, which ultimately means we don't have to take our money outside of the country?
For sure. So if we look at agriculture first and foremost, previously the Land Bank was actively involved in developing it.
Yes.
But it's had its various issues and it's not able to fund. But a lot of the time, large institutions find it very risky to invest into agriculture. In the past, they've been burnt by not understanding the sector properly, but also understanding the assets. So how does agriculture work? How can you mitigate these risks? How can you drive better yields? It's very difficult to get really good returns in the agricultural space if you just provide funding and you don't have a hands-on approach.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you need to really understand the sector. You need to really understand those assets. And having experts in those fields that are able to protect those returns is a key point. So that's what we've managed to build out at Fed Group, is a true understanding of the assets. And, we're constantly on those farms. We're constantly using our tech to monitor those systems that are producing power. So we have engineers, agronomists, actuaries, chartered accountants, all involved in understanding the asset, but it's understanding the metrics of what's coming off these assets. Through being affiliated with an asset manager that actually understands those assets, we're hoping that that's going to really drive reinvestment back into the sectors. If you look at a sector like macadamias with South Africa, we're the largest exporter in the world. Citrus, we're in the top 3 largest exporters around the globe. We're already a powerhouse when it comes to the produce that's coming off out of our country and leaving our shores, because we have the right climatic conditions, the right soil conditions. The ability to produce really high quality output off these farms is known all around the world.
So I see Fed Group moving there in Limpopo and buying an avocado farm soon, right?
Who told you?
I don't know. It's going to happen.
We constantly assessing various sectors, but also new sectors. So being able to get investors involved in the new sectors where we know there's massive opportunity. We know there's a massive need. We know we can add massive amounts of jobs and percentage points to the GDP of South Africa by launching these sectors is a large focus. But at the same time, the more mature sectors, things like macadamias, where we know the infrastructure is already there, and being able to help scale it even better and bigger to provide the needs of the globe, where demand is currently outstripping supply.
I like that. I absolutely, at some point in my former years, when I was young, I thought about all of so I'm from Bushbuckridge, and I promise you, I kid you not, every single household has an avocado tree. And I wanted to do something where I collect all of the avocados and then buy them from the community, and then we supply your local grocers and, all of that. I just never thought, I like what you've just said about the just pumping money into it and stepping out. So understanding, how do avocado trees work? How long do they take? How do you actually add the technology, the taking care of them so that they do give you those yields? I like that quite a lot. I think it's quite a key thing that you've actually just mentioned there, which I think you answer the question of why our fund managers, the large fund managers, not investing, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Not truly understanding the assets and seeing them as too risky. But I think you also touched on an important point. So how do you get communities involved in these projects? So you mentioned avo trees in Bushbuck Ridge. Every one of the projects we're involved in, we say, how do we get these communities involved? So if you look at our moringa farm, every employee that works on that moringa farm got given a moringa seed. And because they're now learning how to grow it on the farm, they can grow it at home. So now they understand how the tree works. The skills have been transferred. That farm then buys all the moringa leaf back from those employees. So not only then are they earning a salary, we're able to then give them a additional revenue into their households by having the communities grow the same produce that the farm needs.
Absolutely.
Easy way to scale it and giving back to the communities in a way that actually adds value to them.
I absolutely love that. I think I'm even almost teary. I think that is just so special. It just makes sense that you're able to invest in real assets that make a real impact in real households. Before I let you go, Warren, I actually just want to keep you here this entire time. But let's talk a little bit about, what does actually differentiate Fed Group from every other fund manager that is out there?
For sure.
Is it your passion? Is it because you have understood what South Africa needs? What really differentiates you guys?
Yeah, I think it started around a decade ago with identifying some key areas within the economy that's going to need direct investments, going to need assistance from the private sector to be able to grow the GDP of the country. And, it's been a long slog and a lot of blood, sweat and tears to prove these models, to get the right teams together to be able to run these various assets as proper businesses and to build up the technology capability to be able to integrate technology and really bring precision agriculture and being able to generate energy in a most efficient way where we constantly maintaining the best outputs of these systems is really what differentiates us. Within Fed Group, we're very blessed to have a team of multi-skilled, multi-talented people across the business. And really being able to work within a team of knowing that there's an expert farmer, working with an expert actuary, working with an expert CA, working with an expert engineer, we can really become true asset managers of these various projects we're involved in. From understanding the soil microbiome, all the way through to driving efficiencies in a pack house, all the way through to having a network of consultants and experts that are able to open up export markets for us, able to drive better pricing and also being fully integrated in these projects. So a vertical and horizontal integration. So, for instance, on a farm, bringing a solar plant onto the farm. So now there's less reliance on the grid. We're able to reduce the cost of the electricity for the farms. Being able to drive the efficiencies in the pack house, so we can fund the pack house, put solar on the pack house, put up a refrigeration center. Everything busy protecting the full value chain of these projects that we're involved in, so that we're able to not only maintain the quality of the produce, but make sure that we're getting better pricing, but also being involved in the full value chain. So, really trying to get the farmers to make more money, because then there'll be more farmers. So the easiest way to influence anyone's behavior is to allow them to make more money.
So, Warren, just thinking about, if you look at the trends from Gen Z, a lot of the young people are saying these days, we want to invest in real things that we can see. Because paper assets are difficult, guys. Like, you're sitting in your house and, Mr. Vermillion and Mr. Koza make a decision. By the time you get the information, your stock portfolio has already either taken the knock or, the president says something, your stock portfolio takes the knock. It just feels like when you've real assets, if you didn't tell me something is going on at my farm, at the moringa farm, then I know there's no impact on it. How are young people receiving you guys?
I must admit that the tangibility of the investment is so key to our whole principle of what we're trying to do. So, we do a lot of filming on these various farms and energy solutions, and really trying to drive that tangibility, being able to get people to taste the produce coming off the farm, but also telling stories around what has happened on the farm. But also our technology allows us to say, well, your asset, if you want to know on your asset, how much water have we saved? How much CO2 emissions have we reduced out of the atmosphere? How many job hours have been created? You know, we're measuring all those metrics with our technology. So we're really driving that tangibility. So not only are you able to see your financial return that your asset's generating, you're also able to see what is the impact that my investment is having. And having that constantly reported on, where we can go down to an asset level or a farm level or a portfolio level, is so key to being able to drive then things like, how do we bring carbon credits into the various investments? How do we bring in these new revenue generating capabilities for these assets, while at the same time looking at an investment portfolio and saying, wow, I've housed 100,000 bees, I've created 2,000 jobs and saved 6,000 liters of water on my investment so far. There's a real feel good about it and a real tangibility that you're able to actually say, well, look, my money's actually doing good.
I like that. I absolutely like that. It reminds me of Ntutugo Shezi with livestock wealth. You know, I mean, at some point we got the opportunity to actually go to the farm, and it was like, oh my goodness, I own cows. I mean, I know I don't, but I own cows. You know what I mean? So it's also, I think, the same thing when we visited Can Agri and seeing the lettuce farm and just what is there. For me, that was absolutely exceptional. So if you do ever get an opportunity to invest in Fed Group, find out if you can visit one of the farms. I think that is one way in which you can really start to feel where your money is actually going. Warren, thank you very much for today. You've been absolutely fantastic, and I'm hoping that we can have further conversation down the line and just, you know, to catch up again.
Perfect, and we'd love to take you to see some of the other farms as well.
Yeah, so cannot wait. I want to
much.
see the macadamia farms, because I've tasted their macadamias, guys. They taste like butter. Like there's something in the macadamia that's just like, this, you can get hooked on it. But definitely thank you very much for tuning in. Remember to go and listen to our podcast. It is Yes, Money Does Matter. We've had the opportunity to speak to the guys at Fed Group in other conversation, and I'm telling you, you don't want to miss out on those. But as we always say, thank you very much for tuning in, and I will see you guys on the next one.